Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 13th Mama Charitable Foundation Visiting Professor in Buddhist Studies lecture series. The theme of the series this time is the interrelationship between the texts, images, and rituals in Mongolian Buddhism. Today is the third lecture and also the last one of the series, and we are very happy and honored to have invited Professor Vesna Wallace, the Mama Charitable Foundation Visiting Professor this year, to share with us her insight and wisdom. Before the lecture begins, I would like to invite Professor Catherine Hardy from the Hong Kong Youth Center of Buddhist Studies to introduce Professor Wallace. Professor Hardy, please.
Thank you very much, Carol, and good evening once again. I think probably most of you here have been with us for these 3 evenings, so Professor Wallace probably needs no introduction, but for those of you who might be here for the first time, let me tell you once again about how our wonderful guest, who we're so honoured to have with us here in Hong Kong and who has given 3 brilliant lectures that we look forward to putting up online and then turning into a conference proceeding series. So these lectures will continue to travel and be read and viewed by many people. So Professor Wallace is a distinguished professor of South Asian and Inner Asian Buddhist traditions in the Department of Religious Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara. She has authored over 90 publications. 8 of these are monographs, and there are 2 books that are currently in press. And in addition to all of this, she has also written many articles and book chapters on diverse aspects of Indian and Mongolian Buddhist traditions. She is at UCSB, an affiliate faculty also in the Translation Studies program and in the Medical Humanities and Disabilities program. She serves on many different editorial and advisory boards and is currently the executive director of the Mongolia Foundation in the US. She has been involved in doing research on Mongolia for, I think, 4 decades now?
Not that long.
Not that long. How many? 30. Okay, so only 3 decades. So we are, extremely privileged to have you with us, and we look forward very much to this final lecture. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Professor Wallace.
Thank you very much for every time I get such a gracious introduction, and thank you all of you who have come every evening and these late evenings after your busy days. So I very much appreciate it. Something happened. I didn't save the title properly. But what I wanted this title to really, it's moving by itself, to be is from imagined Śambhala to the actualized Śambhala. But before I go, I again wish to thank Mama Foundation, Charity Foundation, for making these lectures possible. This is really a great gift to both speakers and to university. So in last lecture we covered prayers, aspirational prayers for Śambhala, and some of these aspirational prayers were part of rituals that we will look today. So in this lecture then we will turn our attention to almost like 4 texts, 3 texts about the practices, 3 texts about the practices of the transference of consciousness formulated by our authors, ones that we have introduced. We were introduced to them in the previous lectures. And the text under examination are ones that you are already familiar. Yeah. These are these 3 texts that practices transfer of consciousness of Hova to Śambhala, rituals for sending the diseased person to Śambhala, rituals method of reciting the Kala Chakra Tantra, and ritual of repelling an enemy. So let me just again introductory words to say about the acts of imagination in the practices described in the text that deal with these topics and that involve various concurrent and complementary mental activities. They can be classified into two general categories, and you will see how they are inwardly oriented practice of imagination and visualization. I think I mentioned that in my first lectures, and outwardly oriented. At times, these two types of imaginations are intertwined, and at other times, they constitute different stages of a single practice, with the externalized visualization preceding the internalized imagination with its subjective content. The inwardly oriented types of imaginations are evoked during the preliminary phases and core practices of the transference of consciousness. According to Zavadamdin, I hope he's here, this elucidation of a swift past texts, after displaying the material representations of Kala Chakra and Śambhala and having worshipped them, the practitioner should visualize them. So you look at them and then you visualize them. Having relied on the yoga of the indivisibility of one's own root guru and the primordial Buddha Kala Chakra, one who desires to put into practice the instruction on journeying to the glorious Śambhala, a celestial realm of humans, should appropriately, we are told, display the image of Kala Chakra and the layout of Śambhala in an isolated place that is agreeable to the mind. Perform puja in front of it and arrange beautiful displays of whatever offerings one has, take refuge and generate bodhicitta. The act of ritual worship and making offerings to the displayed material images suggests that the images have the power to create the sense of immediacy. Material images are intended to be dressed, not just look at, they're to be dressed, to pray to make offerings. In Zavadamdin's text, as in other practices of the transference of consciousness to Śambhala, mental imagery is contingent on external factors such as environment, which must be pleasing to the mind of the practitioners and to the deities. In that regard, Zavadamdin instructs the practitioner to prepare a proper ritual space before engaging in the acts of imagination. He says that, well, in front, just to give you one example, in front of the top of the sun, moon, lotus, and lion's throne, the sublime root guru Kala Chakra, the principal lineage guru, together with the deities and the three jewels, has become pleased with me and others. So one visualizing them in this way and then visualize that they're really pleased. In this act of imagination, we see a combination of the sensory and conceptual or propositional types of imagination with an objectified, externalized content, Kala Chakra, in front of oneself. The sequence of the acts of imagination in this and other practices of transference of consciousness to Śambhala begin then with outward projection of a mental image, in this case, the visualized deity Kala Chakra. The image can become subjectivized by imagining the rays of light emanating from Kala Chakra's body into the practitioner purifying his mind-body complex and transforming his identity. One should imagine, the practitioner should imagine the light from the Guru Kala Chakra entering the crown of one's own head and merging with one's own mind at the center of the heart. After the practitioner is transformed, he should visualize now the land of Śambhala, where his consciousness will travel upon death. He must visualize his outer bodily experience, imagining himself robed in a manner of a monastic person, seated in a meditative posture, having visualized then his external appearance, he begins to visualize his inner body as being essentially divine in the nature of Kala Chakra, thus transforming himself into the embodiment of all objects of refuge. The process of imagining one's appearance described in the following verse marks the preliminary phase of this practice. I don't know if I have that. Let me see. I didn't include all the... Oh, something happened. I didn't say properly. Oh, sorry, I sent the one finished one. It's okay, but I will read to you then. So just to get a sense of this, it says that on the top of the crown of your head, on the upper end of the jati here, is the supreme root, Adi Buddha, primordial Buddha. Your body is reddish white in color and clothes with the three Dharma robes and the golden Pandita belt, this Galukpa Geshe head. And your facial expression is pleased and smiling. So you even visualize yourself this smiling. Your two hands hold the Vajra and bell while the Damaru is sounding. Your 2 feet are crossed in the Vajra posture, and inside the great central channel in your upper seated body at the level of your heart, in the jeweled palace of Kalapa, is your essential nature in the aspect of Kala Chakra. Present in the form of the 10 powerful syllables of the Kala Chakra mantra, and one visualizes them there. The 3 places on your body are marked with the 3 seed syllables, and from the syllable Om Ahum, right? And from the syllable Hum in the heart, light spreads forth to the pure realms of the 10 directions, inviting all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, dissolving yourself into embodiment of all objects of refuge. So, having concluded this preliminary practice by making offering and reciting the prayer supplication to Kala Chakra's blessing to attain quick transference of consciousness to the land of Śambhala, the practitioner can now engage in the core practice of the transference of consciousness by visualizing his body as an immaterial, subtle body, which transcends his social or monastic identity. The practitioner now visualizes himself in accordance with this guidance. And I had this and something happened, sorry. It says, visualize your bowing as being similar to a crystal egg. No longer as Kala Chakra. Outwardly and inwardly translucent, empty and luminous, on the right and the left side, in the center and on the back and in front, everywhere luminous, transparent. A little toward the back, visualize the central channel having the width of a bamboo shoot, very narrow. With its upper end open at this Brahma aperture, at the Ushnisha. Its lower end is a tube with 4-finger breast beneath the navel, white and blocked with a swirling light, similar to the reversed bottom of the brass trumpet that has 4 characteristics, and located directly at the white Brahma aperture, looking that way. Thus, within this central channel, in the center of the heart, is your own prana mind, or this subtle mind of vital energy in the form of the syllable Hum, about the size of the beam, pulsing with radiant light, which is swiftly transferred to the heart of the Guru. The transition from visualizing a gross body to subtle body is to bring about the manifestation of the subtle mind, utilized in the subsequent phase of practice and later made manifest in the intermediate state between death and birth. It is with a subtle mind that the practitioner proceeds to the transference of consciousness. For that to happen, the practitioner must also pray with intense devotion to Kala Chakra, asking him for protection from the dread of the Lord of Death and the frightening past within the bardo. And having prayed, he engages in the final phase of practice by imagining the upper tip of the visualized central channel in Kala Chakra's body, touching the tip of his central channel in the region of the heart and unifying with it. So Zavadandin summarizes this process of imagining in this manner. When rays of light from the heart of the Guru Kala Chakra and from the crown of your head appear similar to a hook and spread from the crown of your head, they strike into the drop of the syllable hum at your heart. Having imagined the lower end of the central channel of the Guru Kala Chakra, who entered your heart from your head and merely touching the upper end of your central channel and as emerging in the place resembling the mouth of a trumpet. So the acts of imagination taught by Zavadandin tend to evade the explanatory methods guided by notions of mind-body dualism. This can also be said of the visualizations of Śambhala as a terrestrial place. The mentally generated image of Śambhala remains within this inner space of the practitioner's mind until it becomes an actualized state of the enlightened mind. In the sequence of the acts of imagination described by Zavadandin, imagination at times involves a visual image, at other times when the imagined evades any visual representation, a mental image is a mere thought, a proposition, such as when the practitioner imagines the material representations of Śambhala to be of the nature of non-dual gnosis. The visualizations of Śambhala as taught in the text on the transference of consciousness by another author, Agwan Damdisuren and Mingyur Dechin Sharaf, entail the imaginative recreation of an alternative world and the imagined enactment of the practitioner's participation in that imagined world. By imagining the mentally simulated world of Śambhala, the practitioner develops a sense of belonging there. As in the pilgrimage to Danzanravja's portal to Śambhala, which we discussed last lecture, in these practices, the practitioner's imagined enactment of his visits to Śambhala and of the interaction with the past, present, and future bodhisattvic kings and kalkis is considered to be an indispensable and precursory condition for actualizing Śambhala, or sending the mind to Śambhala. Creating new memories to be conducive to the desired bardo experience in which the consciousness swiftly proceeds to Śambhala upon death, the mental images of Śambhala produced through imagination are not rejected in favor of non-conceptual meditation that is devoid of imagination. On the contrary, the repeated practice of visualizing the layout of the land, its natural beauty, and its inhabitants provides the practitioner with knowledge and experience of Śambhala that differs from the knowledge born from reading the text. The visualization makes Śambhala recognizable when encountered in the next life. Thus, the sensory imagination of Śambhala has a phenomenal character with an epistemological significance. It is known before it is seen with one's own eyes. On the basis that mentally constructed image is not separate from the mind that constructs it, the degree of subtlety of the visualized image correlates to the degree of subtlety of the mind that creates that image. On this premise, Mingyur Dechin Sharaf and Agwan Damdisuren structured a sequence of visualization practices that would lead to the gradual manifestation of increasingly subtler visions of Shambhala and their corresponding levels of visualization in the practitioner's mind. According to Mingyur Dechen Sharav's The Jewel Steps of a Fortunate Disciple, after the practitioner mentally creates an image of Shambhala and generates the aspiration to be born there, he must visualize it again. This time, however, the visualized Shambhala is no longer terrestrial, physical place, but a celestial pure land initially brought into existence by Vajrapani. In the previous phase of practice, the visualized image of Shambhala was meant to approximate the realm within the physical world experienced by ordinary sense faculties, where this new mental image of Shambhala references the hidden realm that is correlated with physical realm, but it's not the same. The transition from visualizing Shambhala as a physical locale to subtle celestial place is a move again to subtler mental state that bridges the initial and final stages of the practice of transference of consciousness to Shambhala. This transition marks a further refinement of approximation of the sensory perception of Shambhala. In this phase of visualization, the practitioner imagines the celestial Shambhala in front of himself, with the ground covered with various jewels, vast, lovely, and smooth like the palm of one's hand, decorated with trees made of different jewels and various rivers perfumed with sandalwood and the like, and covered by golden lattice filled with various jewelers' lotuses. The ground, the intervening space, and the sky should be imagined as completely and evenly engulfed by bounty of pleasure to delight the senses, including the divine parasols, victory banners, pennants, and canopies. In the center of that pure land stands a palace ablaze with the 7 kinds of jewels. Great light rays spread from it, expansively filling the incalculable world systems. In its center is a magnificent throne made of various kinds of jewels and resting on different kinds of jeweled lotuses. The throne is beautifully embellished with large divine fabric and imbued with limitless excellent qualities. Like in the phase of imagining the terrestrial Shambhala, and we talked about terrestrial Shambhala descriptions in the last lecture. Here too, Shambhala as a pure land is not approached via negativa, but perceptually and conceptually through relatable images. The fact that the invisible world of Shambhala can be envisioned in sensory images and symbols means that it is not ineffable. The mental image of the celestial Shambhala created in this phase of practice is an intermediary between the tangible and entirely immaterial realms. Imagining Shambhala as a terrestrial and celestial realm, the practitioner gains knowledge of 2 manifestations of that realm, neither of which is yet available to sense faculties. After aspiring first for rebirth in the Shambhala, one can aspire for the experience of a more refined version of Shambhala. By imagining Shambhala, whether terrestrial or celestial, the practitioner accumulates merit and blessing necessary for a successful outcome of the transference of consciousness to Shambhala. For the aspirant who assembled the required condition for imbued Shambhala at the time of death, when the clear light of death appears, along with the dissolution of the 4 great elements of his body, and a steering of a subtle vital energy mind, or prana mind, destined for rebirth in Shambhala takes place. Immediately after rebirth, dissolution of the clear light of death occurs. And as soon as the bardo being, who is bound for rebirth to Shambhala, is formed, a white light will appear in the direction of Shambhala in the north. It's like an arrow pointing here on a tube that we take to university. Following the direction of that white light without fear, exhaustion, or shock, the bardo being reaches the majestic Shambhala in an instant. Thus, by imagining the increasingly subtle manifestation of Shambhala, the practitioner mind begins to perceive itself as a spatial realm of light, and it familiarizes itself with its future appearance in the bardo state, in which it realizes that Shambhala is nothing other than its own inner light. In all the texts on the transference of consciousness to Shambhala, we find that different preliminary acts to the core practice, such as acts of visualization, making offerings, recitations of versified homages, invocations, eulogies to the kings of Shambhala, have theurgical significance. Imbued with intentionality, they catalyze the practitioner's subsequent visionary experience of Shambhala, whether in the context of preliminary practices or in the innermost practices of the transference of consciousness. We see both the synchronicity of recitation and visualization and the turning away from the words of prayer and eulogy to these silent images. Although certain visualization practices are characterized by merging of the visual and auditory elements, others are characterized by the coalescence of light with a wide range of forms, including anthropomorphic, environmental, and symbolic or syllabic forms. In Agwandandisuren work, the sequence of visualizations also progresses from the mental construction of an image of the larger physical world, terrestrial Shambhala, to increasingly subtler images of Shambhala. Like in many tantric visualization practices of mandalas, deities and sadhanas of the Pure Lands, in Agwandandisuren work, each sequential act of visualizing Shambhala is placed within a specific phase that prepares the practitioners for this transference of consciousness. Each phase has its own aim and function. As for the facets of Shambhala that one cannot directly recreate or enact, like the inner virtue of inhabitants, one can imagine them, but only conceptually, visually, by perceiving their virtue manifested externally. In Agwandandisuren work, we find the method of projecting images from detailed textual descriptions, rich in suggestive imagery, to derived images or visual forms. According to Agwandandisuren, after the practitioner is introduced to Shambhala and its dynastic lineage, and before engaging in the core practices of transference of consciousness, he must sanctify his environment by cleaning and decorating his residence. He does so laying out visual representations of Shambhala and his Dharma kings on the altar and placing abundant offerings in front of material images. The residential environment prepared in this way becomes a consecrated ritual space in which practitioner can now imaginatively transform himself from the confines of his ordinary world into the sublime realm of Shambhala. This consecrated ritual space provides an external condition to diminish the binary the binary distinction between the practitioner exterior and interior worlds. In that sanctified space, the practitioner must take refuge, recite bodhicitta, purify all phenomena and emptiness, and engage in the process of imagination. So having imagined himself rising with the nature of Buddha Kala Chakra. He visualizes the main deities of the Kala Chakra Tantra while reciting the words of homage to the primordial Buddha, his consort, and all these visualized images that are represented in Thangka painting. And so, having done so, the practitioner further imagines that the assembly of these mother-father deities and their son, surrounded by the retinues of servants, companions, and relatives, is gratified by gods and goddesses. And then practitioner invites these two main deities, Supreme Vajrasattva, please come. And while reciting a designated mantra, he imagines becoming non-dual with all these gods and goddesses that he visualizes within his own body. And having purified himself through imagined self-divinization, he secures blessing for the offerings he had prepared by purifying them with the mantra and dissolving them into emptiness. So in order to be able to purify offerings, he has to first self-divinize himself. After making the purified offerings, while reciting the mantras and praises, the practitioner visualizes these mantric syllables and brings them to the mind the excellent qualities of the environment of Śambhala and inspires praise again, aspiration prayer to be born there. Having done so, he engages in an elaborate visualization involving Śambhala location, its layout, natural environment. He adds a lot to these descriptions that we didn't see in narrative description of Śambhala. So it's interesting, everybody brings a little bit of their own vision. And the visualized imagery prescribed by Agvindan Suren, for the most part, thus corresponds to this description, but as I said, he also brings his own. And by recollecting the scenes and conditions of Śambhala through visual mental imagery, the practitioner mentally reconstructs them, reinforming his karmic relation with Śambhala. Because of the concomitance of the recollection and the sensory imagination of the visualized scenes, the qualitative epistemological difference and the objective boundary between the two becomes diminished, if not non-existent. The textual description of the scenes is to enable the practitioner to retrieve the information in his memory and avert any deviation in the content of his imagination. After completing that phase of praxis, Agvindan Suren instructs the practitioner to recall without any distraction the meaning of the words that describe the beauty of Śambhala. So not just to visualize, but to dwell on this description and the meaning, what it really means symbolically. So imagining Śambhala to be present, the practitioner holds a stick of fragrant incense between his palms and recites in a pleasant tone with deep reverence that he says, may the body of gnosis which extinguishes all the atoms of material things, the light mind wonderfully filled with 20,000 states of immutable bliss, embracing the Mahamudra imbued with all supreme aspects, synthesis of all the victors, come to this place. And if I sincerely entreat you with my yearning face and admiration, then by the mastery of generating the mind of the power of miraculous ability, may the Dharma kings, Kalkis, their consorts and son joyfully come to this supreme place. He creates image of Śambhala and then he invites them all in there. Then he begins a next set of imagination, visualizing the Buddha Kala Chakra as a Kalki king, who together with his retinue ascends into the sky by means of extraordinary abilities. Then practitioner mentally pictures the bathhouse to which he invites primordial Buddha Kala Chakra as well as the past, present, and future Dharma kings and kalkis of Śambhala, to bathe them. He imagines offering them bodily ointments, fine clothing, beautiful ornaments, and a vase, while asking them to remain in the world for the sake of sentient beings. And having done so, he imagines those kings and kalkis returning to their thrones and being seated there. At the conclusion of this ritual event, the practitioner pays homage to all those kings, addressing them by their names and reciting a litany of their individual enlightened qualities and activities, thus demonstrating the knowledge of their personal names, qualities, and achievement. Through this referential conduct, the practitioner demonstrates his affection and admiration for them, and thus creates close ties with each of them. Having worshipped them in this way, the practitioner again makes offerings of multifunctional water, water for cooling their feet, water for sprinkling their bodies, and for rinsing their mouths. After the water offering, he performs various hand gestures and bodily movements to symbolize the types of offerings he's making. And I'll give you just example, a long list of these bodily postures and hand gestures he makes. Just one example. When addressing the goddess Akshata, who holds fragrant, fine colored fruits, he should hold the fruits with his two slightly loose Vajra fists facing upward. With his bodily posture and hand gestures, he symbolically simulates the characteristic and activities of the offering goddess, and temporarily becomes, for each of them, he does this way. After presenting this inner offering, he is instructed to mentally and verbally present the outer offerings to the imagined assembly. He imagines himself emanating those items from within the state of space-pervading samadhi, and performs a new set of hand gestures symbolizing the act of making the outer offerings. You can see how elaborate these acts of imagination are. Through this multimodal communication, the practitioner interacts with visualized deities and kalkis and their retinues with all of this, his body, speech, and mind. So in these acts of imagination, the practitioner not only dwells on the mentally created images as an object of observation, but also engages in imagined ritual performance within this visualized space. So as a result, he becomes both a visualizing subject and an agent acting in the imagined ritual act, somebody who is bathing, dressing, right, and so on. Through this mental dramatization of these effects of this act of worship toward the meritorious visualized field, the practitioner generates merit and induces blessings in his mind stream. This is what we are told happens, conducive to the core practice of transference of consciousness to Śambhala. So after having completed a long series of practices described, the practitioner is guided now into the core practice of transferring consciousness to Śambhala. In the core practice, as described by Agwandam Disuren, the practitioner visualizes Guru Kala Chakra on the top of his head and imagines his mind manifesting as a white Vajra at the level of the heart, sparkling and hovering, light and mobile, on the verge of soaring upward through the central channel. He must visualize it as being of the width of a reed arrow, extending from beneath the navel all the way to the Brahma aperture at the top of the head. And having visualized his own mind in that manner, the practitioner prays for the purification of karma and for the Guru's guidance to Śambhala. He imagines that by the power of his single-pointed supplication, hook-like rays of light emerge from the Guru's heart and strike the sparkling white Vajra in his mind. And so by imaginatively placing the arrow of the syllable hi, which forcefully draws the lower pranas upward, the practitioner imagines the arrow striking the heart of the guru. He then imagines that as he utters certain syllables, the arrow descends again into the region of his heart and sequentially rises and descends. And after imagining this, he must pray with intense yearning to be born in Śambhala. He visualizes the Guru Kala Chakra again on the crown of his head, joyfully melting into light and dissolving into him, transforming him into the Buddha Amitayus. And while imagining himself as the Sambhogakaya of Amitayus, the practitioner sits in the Vajra posture and then visualize a moon disk in his heart. I feel like I should skip some of this to go elsewhere. So after the series of visualization, he prays for the attainment of the state of immortal Vidyadhara when the signs of untimely death appear. According to Kalachakra system, but also even other tantras in medicine, in Tibetan and Mongolian medicine, untimely death is death prior to the age of 100. 100 is a timely death. Then after paying homage to Kala Chakra and all this deity, he imagines this field of merit in front of him, melting into light, dissolving into the point between his eyebrows and blessing his mind stream. Similarly to core transfer of consciousness practice taught by Java Damdin, in this practice, the process of mentally creating the images of Śambhala and the deities culminates in a subtle image of light at the heart, symbolizing the mind of clear light, which will naturally manifest in the bardo state and proceed towards Śambhala in the north. We thus see that in this co-practice, the transference of consciousness to Śambhala, imagining oneself as a transparent sphere of light becomes indispensable for inducing the subtle mind's familiarization with its luminous nature. And this nature manifests in the bardo states and leads one either to terrestrial or celestial Śambhala, or to the realization that Śambhala is the manifestation of the mind's light of gnosis. Thus, every manifestation experience of Śambhala in all these practices that we discussed is contingent on the degree and subtlety of the mind that perceives this. So that's enough about transfers of consciousness Śambhala. But you got at least sense how elaborate actually they are. Now let's briefly look in ritual that involves imagination and ritual deals with caring for the diseased person through Kala Chakra, basically sending someone else to Śambhala through Kala Chakra. This is a short ritual practice which is intended to secure a rebirth in Śambhala for a person who has recently died, not for someone who has died long ago. One such ritual is described in a text called A Complete, Easily Implemented Method of Caring for the Deceased by Means of Glorious Kala Chakra. And it is authored by Lusan Choijin, whom we mentioned in the last two lectures. Lusan Choijin here instructs those who wish to do this ritual to first take refuge and generate bodhicitta, like with all tantric rituals, right? To bring the Buddha Kala Chakra into one's presence by means of visualization and then worship him. And having visualized him in a specific manner, so I'm skipping all this detailed visualization, he recites the words of supplication, says, please grant me all the siddhis, both mundane and supramundane, without exception. Please liberate all my close associates concerning the Dharma and wealth, especially those intended deceased person here and others from the danger of unfortunate rebirths and bardo states and lead them to higher rebirths, excuse me, to the higher rebirths and liberation. Excuse me. After this application, then, the practitioner visualizes rays of light and floods of ambrosia emanating from the body of the divine refuge, so that light entirely purifies the sin and defilements of the deceased individual, establishing the deceased individual in the glory of higher rebirth and liberation. The practitioner then recites the Kala Chakra mantra many times and concludes the ritual with a prayer for the deceased to meet the teacher, to practice the Dharma, and to take rebirth in Śambhala as the rightful heir of the Kalki king, where the deceased will acquire the experience of the Vajra Yoga, of the profound path, and swiftly achieve the union of empty form and sublime bliss. In this practice, as in the previously mentioned practices, the act of imagination is as much performative act as a particular utterance. By imagining oneself to be purified by the flows of ambrosia or the light rays emanating from the deity, the ritual performer is actually purified. This is what makes his utterances performative. Now, this was a very short one, and imagination is very short. But here's a very interesting text, that ritual that is I like most. Although those are nice. But here, additional examples of the performativity of the acts of imagination are found in several ritual texts, and one that I will focus on is one composed by, again, same Lufsan Choijin, which is called An Entrance into the Ocean of the Collection of Tantras, How to Read the Glorious Kala Chakra Tantra, how to recite it. And this is very interesting. So in this ritual practice, after brief homage to Kala Chakra, the Tantric practitioner who wishes now to recite the Tantra must first take refuge, generate bodhicitta, and purify and transform himself into the Buddha Kala Chakra. So you recite as the Buddha Kala Chakra, not as some geshe. So having taken on the identity of Kala Chakra, one purifies the animate and inanimate worlds by imaginatively transforming the inanimate world into celestial palaces and its inhabitants into infinitely pure gods and goddesses who will be his audience. So having thus divinized the ordinary worlds and their inhabitants, the practitioner further sanctifies the space for the ritual recitation of the Kala Chakra Tantra by simultaneously reciting and imagining that in that space in front of him is a Guru Kala Chakra, along with the assembly of the deities of the Kala Chakra Mandala and the tutelary deities of the 4 classes of Tantras, the countless jinas and the peaceful and fierce deities in the surrounding areas. The practitioner imagines them all, along with their heirs, as instantaneously coming into his presence. The deities are witnesses to his recitation. And when all of these deities are brought into the practitioner's presence in this way, he pays them homage, offers them multitudes of offerings, and asks them for a blessing that will enable him to make the meaning of the words of the Kala Chakra Tantra clear and truthful in his recitation. After supplicating them, then practitioner invites another group of listeners. This time, he invites the assemblies of Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Vidyadharas, and sages, along with 6 classes of six classes of sentient beings including the powerful gods, nagas, non-human beings from the limitless space in the 10 directions. He calls them to rise in unity and to come into his presence and listens with faith and reverence, reminding this imagined audience of this rare opportunity to hear the Dharma, which is difficult to hear even in 1,000 eons, and which bestows the majesty and benefit of happiness upon those who hear it. Afterwards, the practitioner imagines them arriving, and he imagines himself to be in the center of the limitless space filled with the ocean of the assemblies of viras and dakinis. And from that imagined boundless space, he recites the clear words of the Tantra in a pleasant and melodious manner. And having imaginatively placed himself in that space, he again visualizes his body in the form of Kala Chakra, but this time in a Kala Chakra's universal form. He does this by imagining that inside each atom of his body are inconceivable Kala Chakra mandalas, equal to the disk of encompassing space. In the center of the atoms, within those visualized mandalas, are displays of the defined forms emanating throughout limitless Dharmadhatu, ultimate space. He then imagines that those divine forms are proclaiming the words of the Tantra with a sound resembling the simultaneous burst of 1,000 rolls of thunder. So imagine this, it's very kind of, what is the English word? Imagining that each atom of your body is this mandala filled with deities who are also resonating the words of Tantra throughout space. So having imagined his body as a cosmic body consisting of the multitudes of deities simultaneously proclaiming the words of the Kala Chakra Tantra with their powerful voices, the practitioner directs his power of imagination to the scripture itself, which he has laid out in front of him. First, he thinks of the text as being of the nature of the renunciation and realization of the mind of Kala Chakra, manifesting in the form of a collection of letters written down with the melted goals on the surface of the lapis lazuli colored pages. Then he visualizes these golden letters as blazing rays of light. He immediately imagines that the light and ambrosia of the 5 colors that correspond to the accomplishment of the rites of pacification emanate from the pages of the Tantra. Each letter of the text should be imagined as expressing the sound of unborn echoes with drops of ambrosia issuing from the pages. He further conceptually imagines that the words of the Tantra, which are clearly proclaimed from all the facets of the inanimate and inanimate worlds and their inhabitants, are of the nature of the innate sound of Dharmata, the ultimate reality, delighting the minds of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times. Having visualized in this way, the practitioner imagines that all sentient beings' sins and mental obscurations, along with their imprints, are now purified, and that all sentient beings experience Buddhahood in the form of Kala Chakra. He further imagines that all evil thoughts and actions of malevolent beings who are difficult to subdue and who harbor negative thoughts toward the Buddhist teachings and other sentient beings are now pacified, and that the malevolent beings are brought onto the authentic path. After imagining the transformative effects of this ritual recitation of the Tantra on other beings, the reciter also imagines that the harms of epidemic, conflicts, famine, frost, hail, and other misfortunes are brought to an end in all the realms of existence, and that the magnificent prosperity and well-being of samsara and nirvana are increased and expanded. After imaginatively creating this magnificent cosmic scene filled with a divine, purified and subdued audience, the practitioner imagines himself again placed in the center. He recites the Kala Chakra Tantra with faith and reverence, and with a pure voice and clear, sweet-sounding tone, because the way in which he recites will affect, shape and influence the audience's understanding. After reciting the Tantra as many times as appropriate, he must seal that recitation with prayer of dedication. At the conclusion of reciting this prayer, at the end of the ritual recitation, the practitioner imagines the objects of his refuge melting into light and dissolving into him. He also imagines that the minds of those who have come to hear his recitation of the Tantra are now ripened and liberated, and he further imagines those beings departing to their individual Buddha fields. At the end of this ritual text, Losang Choijin informs the reader that this method of reciting the Kala Chakra Tantra is applicable to any scriptural collection of the unexcelled Yoga Tantras, all of which issue from the four mouths of Kala Chakra. So same ritual can be applied to recited other Tantras. He also sees it appropriate for a practitioner who has excelled in the practice of higher Tantras to imaginatively manifest his mind as a Buddha Kala Chakra in order to actualize Kala Chakra, thus indirectly communicating the soteriological significance of imagination. If you want to become a Buddha Kala Chakra, you have to imagine. As for the personal benefits of reciting the Kala Chakra Tantra, the practitioner is told that when he recites or contemplates the Tantra, he becomes like Vajradhara, because even the syllables of the collection of Tantras, which have arisen due to the power and majesty of Vajradhara, are difficult to encounter in hundreds of eons. So, how much time do we have? Oh, okay, I still have some time. So the acts of imagination employed in this ritual recitation of the Tantra are representative of the three types of imagination: sensory, purely conceptual, and participatory. Involving both cognitive and verbal processes, these rituals provide the ritual reciter with an expanded mental horizon of a self-created cosmic vision. Their epistemological role is to provide the practitioner with a perception of the sublimated worlds and his sublimated identity, which are otherwise, again, inaccessible to the ordinary senses. The inaccessibility does not make them any less real than the ordinary phenomenal world, which is perceived through the habitual propensities of ignorance. The imagined experience of this sublime alternate reality reinforces the tantric practitioner's presuppositions of these multiple perspectives and their corresponding realities. The sublimated world that is imagined, either propositionally or sensorially, can be integrated into the daily life through repeated recollection until that imagined sublimated reality is no longer imagined. Now, I don't know if we have a time to look briefly at the ritual which I addressed in last lecture. It is the Javadambin ritual of repelling the enemy. So maybe 15 minutes, unless you're tired of all these descriptions of imaginations. In a ritual for repelling barbarian troops and forces inimical to the Dharma, described in Javadambin text called the Vajra Key. It's a very long text, but I will address this simply by the short name, Vajra Key. Various modes of communications are directed toward both external and internal Buddhist deities, and indirectly toward the enemy, who must be repelled through a described deity yoga in which the ritual performer assumed the identity of Vajravega. Vajravega, if you remember from last lecture, is a fierce aspect of Kala Chakra. He imaginatively transformed the practitioner, who is now imaginatively transformed, becomes simultaneously a medium and an agent of a violent ritual action. As I mentioned last time, the kind of religious and cultural environment in which Zawan Damdin composed this ritual was to protect in defense of the Dharma, right? As a ritual of repelling, or even as a ritual of exorcism, and the Vajraki is fundamentally ritually enacted fierce dharma, violent drama, in which the primary protagonist are Vajravega, his frightening army of 60 protective deities who are dispatched into battle to repel the barbarian troops. Through a series of liturgical utterances, this fierce army is alternately entreated and commanded, pleaded and commanded with kind of imperative words to repel, beat, and utterly annihilate the enemy's forces. The repetitive structure of the stanzas amplifies both the power of liturgical persuasion and the authority of the ritual performer, whose efficacy is further enhanced through self-generations as wrathful Vajravega. The ritual liturgical components are also include the strategic development, the employment of tormas, being specifically prescribed, today my speech is terrible, specifically prescribed decoration and colors inauspicious to the enemy, along with various other symbolically encoded ritual implements and the threatening sounds of musical instruments. The notion that the colors, shape, and images of ritual objects, as well as the sounds of percussion, exert their own power in the phenomenal world through ritual performance, has its roots in ancient Indian ritual practice and has permeated virtually all Buddhist tantric rituals. Imagining oneself in the form of tutelary deities, to inside the mind of Vajravega, to action and visualizing Vajravega's numerous manifestations and so on. All of this we find in Indian sources. So after a long series of liturgical recitation, a ritual performer imaginatively sends the tormas to the deities and requests them to capture the enemy's troops in their home and to destroy them by gun bullets, because this is the early 20th century, right? In this repelling ritual, the practice of visualization, bodily actions, liturgical recitations, at times performed interchangeably and at times complementarily, and at times simultaneously. As in the previously described practices for the transference of consciousness, here too we see this kind of constructive imagining, which differs from imagistic imagining, in that it involves the production of mental representations devoid of perceptual contact. This repelling ritual feature liturgies can convey the ritual performer's command to the deities, expressing his ritual authority over the deities. The ritual serves as a medium through which even the fully enlightened Vajravega must be persuaded and steered to violent action. Without the ritual, his protective power would remain dormant and his pledge to protect inactive. like other ritual, this ritual is the means of bringing deities into the performer's presence. If not summoned, they do not come on their own. Throughout this ritual, the performer's role intermittently shifts from the instigator of the deity's actions to one who assumes the deity's identity, only to revert to the role of the supplicant, seeking the vanquishing of his enemy. So through these violent images and utterances, the ritual becomes a conduit for the performer to channel his own antipathy toward the enemy through a sublimated divine form. So enough of this ritual. I could end here, or I could say some, depends how many questions you have and how tired you are. So I have some conclusion, but I have said so many times things, so maybe it would be repetitive for you. All right. So the processes of imagination that we have seen so far are structured ritual acts of mentally creating an alternate reality, bringing it to mind through recollection and participating in it. In these practices, a mental image operates on different levels. Like material images, intentionally created mental images are conceptual tools that stimulate the experience of an alternate reality. Some of them, such as images of Kala Chakra and Śambhala, are iconic images whose religious and cultural histories are connected to the Kala Chakra tantric tradition in India, Tibet, and Mongolia. They are often imbued with events and narrative qualities, as we have seen. We have also seen that mental images in these practices possess positive value and the power to change how the imaginer thinks or perceives the visible and invisible worlds. They have the power to create new experiences and transform the world. Through the process of creating images and participating in them as both imagining subject and as object of imagination, the imaginer is recreated by them in new forms, identities, and environments. The expansive capacities of mental images in the practices discussed provide a venue for understanding the power of imagination in creating and sacralizing ritual space. We have also seen that imagery is transportable. It can be transformed from an image embodied in material object to mental or object or poetic image, from a linguistic image to mental image or vice versa. Although the mental images in the practices described are replicated from material linguistic images available to others, they always remain private, accessible only to the imaginer. And I'll finish here. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor Wallace, for the final lecture in the series and taking us through such fantastic landscapes of the mind and imagination. So we have a little bit over half an hour, so if there are some questions, please go ahead and ask. Yes, Professor Halkias.
Thank you very much, Vesna, for this. Just something to clarify. I know you said it before. So these texts were early 20th century here, these ritual texts.
The Davadamdin's Vajraki is the late 20th century. In some, it's hard to know exactly when, because all these authors composed this, lived in the late 19th century, early 20th century.
And they were written in Tibetan.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, what is the lineage? Like, where are they drawing this information? Because, you know, I've worked quite a bit on Poetex, it was for Sukhavati, and there's some very unusual items here. Like, for example, the fact that you go from the bardo directly into Śambhala.
Yes.
Whereas usually, if you practice Poa, you don't have to go through the bardo at home. You go directly at the moment of death.
Yeah, but for this one you go.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'm just very curious if you know where they're tracing, because of course to write a text like this, you're drawing information from some tradition that existed previously, and I was wondering if you knew where are they getting this information?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think it's difficult to know. First of all, Kala chakra initiations usually were not performed in Mongolia because they are very expensive, and the Qing dynasty didn't want to spend money on these elaborate initiations. So then monks had to travel abroad. But usually it's not like a bunch of monks can go. There was one large initiation, and it was in early 1930s, because of the conditions, political and social conditions, that monks were already being killed and so on. We know that one takes place in the countryside, but we don't know much about it. Initiations were mainly in Tibet, and so because this journey was long, was expensive, so it was like heads of divisions, these principalities, they would choose 2 senior lamas, and they would sponsor their travel to Tibet, where they would receive Kala Chakra initiation, followed by teachings. And those people who came back, they were given these Vajra rings, and that marked that they have received the initiation, and as such, they would be like sources of Kala Chakra blessings for their principality. And they were not allowed to travel, to ever leave their principality. Travel but come back, but they were not allowed to permanently move to another district and take these blessings away, but also because they had such a distinguished status, they never had to pay taxes to the Qing. So that's why also they had to be within their own district. But now we know that, like from Zavadamdi's writings and so on, and others, that they did receive transmissions in Mongolia from many Tibetans who were passing through and coming, whether it is just a lung or whether it is something else. And also in this, early 20th century, when a Panchen Lama was giving initiations in Inner Mongolia, then this was nearby. Many have left for that. These teachings lasted longer, weeks. But then revolution also was happening in a bad way, so that many couldn't come back. They stayed in Inner Mongolia. Some came and some remained. So that's why it's difficult. They don't always mention people from whom they received. So whether this is their own, in some of these rituals you can see borrowings from other places, little bit from here, little bit from there. I didn't bring that out because that would be much longer lecture, but there is another ritual which I didn't speak today about, which you can clearly from different, see influences from different rituals. So they create their own.
Because in the Kalachakra Tantra you don't have Poa, do you?
No.
No, so it's borrowed from the 6 yogas of Naropa, and somehow it makes itself into fascinating material. Thank you, yes.
Yeah, welcome. Claude?
Well, I have a remark and a question. First of all, I think that empty form is a wrong translation of Tongsuk. Because, like
Yes.
it's normally shunyata bimba.
I agree completely.
And it's a noun, so you cannot
it's
use
a
the adjective
karmadara,
empty.
right.
It's
a
very
tatpurusha,
widespread in Northern America. And,
exactly.
Because
I even
they
call
don't
it,
read Sanskrit normally.
right. I even call it reflection of emptiness. I even don't call it
reflection or image or
image
something
of
like
emptiness.
that. The other thing is, like suk is not like form, it's
Right,
bimba.
right.
Yeah,
Exactly,
which
I
is
completely agree.
yeah.
In all my writings, I say reflection of emptiness, but here because
how is this term translated in Mongolian though?
Which one?
The Tongsuk?
Well, this is all written in
you're using Tibetan.
In Tibetan, yeah.
Now,
because
like,
Mongolians primarily wrote.
Yeah,
in
my
Tibetan.
question is related to Pova, and so you when you transfer yourself or somebody into Shambhala, I understand that it's not like the physical Shambhala on this planet, but it's a kind of more luminous or
Right.
ideal Shambhala, right?
That can be terrestrial.
It can be.
If
what
one
you
stays on a level of visualizing gross body, but if you are going with a further practice and you start visualizing
and
subtle
when you
body
reach,
and all that,
like the terrestrial Shambhala, are you born into a womb of a mother and say 9 months?
Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yes. This is a human realm, right? This terrestrial Shambhala is a human realm.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite important because you
Yeah.
want to be able to practice Tantra, so you need a human body, right?
Right. Exactly. You can't otherwise practice.
And there is another ethical question I have. I mean, if you perform Pova for somebody deceased, I mean, somebody dead, you cannot ask anymore if somebody really wants to go to Shambhala. I mean, you're going to a place, which is facing a global war, against all the barbarians, which is 99% of the world population, to establish like a Hindu caste system.
Right.
So it might not be everybody's goal, right?
Exactly. So I assume, because this is a monastic person writing, that he might be writing for monks who were killed during revolution, or he thinks everybody wants to go to Shambhala now, so.
Yeah, in Mongolia, everybody wants to go there anyway, so it's
Yeah.
not really an issue.
But that's a...
But I'm thinking, like of Western people in Europe and America. So
like
for example, their parents or their uncle or something pass away, and they go to a lama and ask him to perform Pova.
Yeah.
But for a person who may not even be a Buddhist,
So it's done within cultural, environment.
I agree, in Mongolia you don't have this problem.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure, you're welcome.
Renju up the back.
Thank you, Professor Wallace, for all the 3 fascinating lectures. I have a question about the iconography of Kala Chakra.
Yeah,
And I found
had it on my, and somehow I forgot to save it. Sorry, I had it on my PowerPoint.
Yeah. I found a statue which was identified as a single Kala Chakra without his console. So I found this kind of special because usually you find the Kala Chakra with his console. So have you ever seen such kind of statue? Or
Yes, actually in Jonampa, when Jonampas do sadhana practice of Kala Chakra, they visualize a single Kala Chakra. I have the copy of the Atanka at home, and it is a single Kala Chakra.
So it is visualized at the stage of generation? Or
Yes, stage of
before
generation.
the union of the Kala Chakra and his console.
That's how I was told by Jonampa Lama, and I've seen on the Atanka just a single Kala Chakra standing.
Do you know which text is on this kind of visualization?
Or of a single Kala Chakra?
Yes.
I don't know, but maybe if you look in Jonampa practices, text involving a sadhana practice, you will see. But I don't know of my hand. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Wallace. I have a couple of questions. The first one links to what Professor Matters was just saying about the terrestrial level and the celestial level, and then you sort of suggested there was also implicitly the mind. Is there in these texts, is this made explicit as a sort of link to the three kayas? Is there some resonance
Very
with
good
that?
question. These texts don't mention, but I was told by Jonam Palama that within, at least it is his interpretation, that there are, that Śambhala is can be Nirmana Kaya, Sambhoga Kaya, Dharmakaya, yeah. So I don't know if this is his own interpretation or whether it comes through somehow oral transmission or textual transmission. But yeah, that's...
And thank you. And the second question was about, within this tradition, at least in Mongolia, how important is it felt to be for the efficacy of the ritual to actually do the visualization precisely and correctly? Because I know in some lineages, the emphasis goes a little bit more on your intention and your devotion, and getting the exact sharp image doesn't matter so much. So
this all plays, same role, of course, but I think if one can't visualize some detail there, I don't think it matters, because these practices of visualization are not designed like a sadhana practice to develop shamatha, right? They are there to familiarize the mind with Kala Chakra, with Shambhala. In a sadhana practices of Kala Chakra, you are kind of simultaneously, in a way, supposed to start to develop shamatha together with vipassana or insight. But this practice, of course, they help, and if somebody is a skillful and experienced meditator, can visualize all of that. But I have not seen saying, oh, if you don't visualize a certain pillow under, King Kalki's bottom, that you won't be born there. But it's rather the more you visualize, the better chance that you will know where you are when you are reborn. And I said, where did I end up? Like maybe deceased. So like, whoop. I'm in some Pure Land, but I don't know where. Jimmy.
Thank you, Professor Wallace. I wonder in these texts whether there's any description of auspicious signs of someone who has reached Shambhala. Just like Sukhavati, even for bystanders who are not necessarily Buddhists, sometimes they say they can smell the fragrance, they see the rainbow lights. So I wonder if it's something similar.
No, it's just so how what happens when you are there, right? Like your body is very attractive and nice, all of this. But there is no description. But one could imagine, like with many other sadhana imagination practices, that it's structuring the mind and is doing something, right? But they don't talk about this.
It's very personal to the practitioners.
Maybe something like this is discussed between a teacher and a disciple, right? But it's not in the text itself.
Speaking of signs, can I just follow 1 second? Sorry. Do they use a blade of grass to see if actually the Brahma chakra has been opened? Because in the Tibetan tradition, when you perform poa, one way of the sign that actually you're ready, you can actually transfer to the Pure Land is by placing a blade of grass on the head. And if it stands, that means the hole is open and then you can transfer.
Very interesting. Maybe in some other types of poa practices, but no, there's no mention of
This
this.
one. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, this is interesting.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you for teaching, Professor Wallace. I'm curious, because you mentioned visualization a lot, tanka, images. I am curious, just a little bit curious about how would a blind person participate in the visualization of Shambhala? Do they need more practice than a sighted one?
Maybe if somebody reads
Who
for
is
them,
blind?
they will not be able to see paintings or tankas, but they can still, in their mind, visualize if somebody reads to them, right? Detailed. Some of these descriptions, I didn't have time. In one of these practices, description is so long and describes so many details that just by listening you can kind of imagine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am not very familiar with the Tibetan tradition. I do the Sanskrit. But you mentioned a few mantras. Are these encoded in the texts in the same way that Tantric Sanskrit texts encode them? Because the descriptions seem quite straightforward. But I wondered about, it was just like the Kala Chakra mantra or this other Om something.
Yes.
Do they have all that encoded meaning and all of that?
Yes, the Kala Chakra mantra has encoded meaning. The other, like a syllable hik or, some of these syllables, they all actually have some encoded meaning, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wallace. I have a question about the ritual, the sahana, about destroying enemies. So isn't it Kalachakra is part of the Vajrayana practice, so it is still under the Mahayana vehicle. And Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are all having the compassions and everything. So if you practice something that is destroying the enemies, how can you say that this is an act of mercy or compassionate?
In Vajrayana, good question. In Vajrayana, you have a peaceful deities, you have a fierce deity, or one deity has two aspects, peaceful and fierce, right? But so these aspects are like different enlightened activities, right? But the fierce aspect doesn't mean anger. The deity is angry somehow, or when one practices this ritual, it's not practicing out of hatred, of an anger, right? But preservation of the Dharma. So yeah, you are right. It's not like all quite clear, right? That even though, they said you can, just like a parent when it sees a child trying to put a finger in a socket, right? Assumes a fierce form, said, don't you do it, right? He doesn't hate the child, but tries to prevent some disaster there.
So what happens after you destroy them or, so-called punish them?
Yeah.
Or you send them straightly to Śambhala or somewhere to the Pure Land?
They usually have the practice of transforming them, and it's not just killing.
So which realm they would be falling to?
Oh, maybe human realm, or may go directly because it's done through enlightened being, right? Who is set there in emotion. Could be that they're sent to Pure Land, transformed. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, you had in Indian tantras, sometimes, these rituals of like ritual killing or
right.
And other like practices which were not socially acceptable, so to say. And but then, with the beginning of the second diffusion of the Dharma in Tibet, it was made clear, that these passages should not be taken literally, and you cannot simply literally kill an enemy, with tantric ritual. This has to be interpreted, it has a provisional meaning, and the Mahayana like code, like prevails, and the tantras have to be interpreted accordingly. So the question is, like nowadays, or like in the 20th century, or like during the time you were visiting Mongolia, did you witness like some ritual killings, or did you hear of them?
No, I saw, not I saw, but I'm aware of some shamanic rituals that kill actually.
But that's not Buddhist.
Yeah, that's not Buddhist, no.
I mean Buddhist
but
ritual
Mongolians are a little bit different than Tibetans.
Yeah, sure, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, they are warrior mentality kind of too. But there are 4 enlightened activities, right? And so one of enlightened activity is ferocity. And that's why you have all these rituals of pacification, or rituals of confusion, attraction, and so on. But I think for Javadamdin, that was real. It was, I didn't say all the horrible things that I read there, where Vajravega is commanded to do these things. But because it's a Vajravega, because it is an enlightened being, right? So there is this underlying assumption that being destroyed by the enlightened mind, it's not same like being destroyed by soldiers, although he talks about guns and, beating. And
I mean, the main question whether this is only metaphorical,
No, that was not metaphorical. He's talking.
They are really doing that.
Yeah, they are really doing this ritual.
I don't think this agrees with Mahayana Buddhism. I'm sorry to say.
No, yeah, it's hard to digest it. Yeah, no, I don't think it's metaphorical for what I read.
Sam, I think you had a question?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Wallace. I have some questions about the ritual for sending the deceased one to the Śambhala. I'm interested in the physical setting. For example, how many main ritual performers in one ritual, and usually how long does it take?
It's a very short ritual, right? So it's a one ritual performer. It's one person who does this ritual. He imagined, but also I didn't describe all his imaginations of himself transforming and so on. So he has to, again, transforming oneself into a deity. It's like a deity is doing this. You become a conduit of activities of that enlightened deity, Kala Chakra, who is ascending a person to Śambhala.
And how popular this ritual is? For example, is it still practicing in Mongolian now?
It's possible, yeah. That's practice. I didn't, ask people, but because they do practices all the time, yeah. Well, for both people who died and for those who are dying, yeah.
So it is very common. It is very common to hire or invite.
Well, it's not a spectacle where you invite lots of people. Usually, family invites a lama who does this.
Does it have a fixed course or?
Sorry?
Does it have a fixed course for this
fixed
course?
Course. Yes, there is a fixed course of doing it. If this is what you are asking, yeah.
Is it expensive? May I ask?
Oh. No, their rituals are cheap, especially for someone from Hong Kong.
I have a quick question about...
Usually family has to leave. It is just the deceased and the lama who stay within a home and does ritual. The rest of family is out, so that they are grieving or their soul somehow wouldn't interfere with the ritual. Sorry.
So when you were talking about the three different types of imagination, you mentioned the sensorial, the conceptual, and then what was the other third type? There was
and that visual.
participatory. Exactly. Exactly.
You remember better what I said then.
Yes. And so I was wondering exactly where the role of emotion and affect would fit into that schema, and if you could say a bit more about because there's certainly a lot of coaching in terms of landscape, space, color, form, movement, but what about emotion and affect? I know that you did mention, for example, feeling pleased, the experience of being pleased in the presence of the deity, but what other feelings and emotions can we talk about?
They talk about reverence, devotion, like this utter devotion and reverence, and this utter desire to be there, and in awe, being in utter awe, how beautiful this place is, and inviting. But it's more about reverence, really.
And then just to go quickly back to the question about the expelling enemies. What were you asking before class when you said, is this metaphoric? Meaning, is it the case that the people who do it only want to subdue their enemies in a sense of subduing their negative afflictive emotions? I mean, in what sense were you claiming, in what sense could this ritual be done and brought within the Mahayana ethical schema?
Like I would say you are not killing anybody at all. I mean, you're
but you are
killing
wishing
your perception, like your negative thoughts, like which like make a person appear as an enemy. So you just kill your negative like projection, which transforms anybody who might even be your friend, like appear as an enemy. So you're not really killing somebody.
Not physically, but you are sending these weapons, kind of, It has something shamanic feel there, that these objects of these fierce stormers, actually these decorations and colors represent parts of bodies of a person to whom this torma is being mentally, ritually sent. Just like I mentioned, I think in a previous lecture, while Tibetans describe the Shambhala war as just something where this Raudra Chakri Kalki, he creates this vision, this kind of illusion of an army, and an enemy sees and backs down and subdues because sees this enormous army. For Mongolians, it's not imaginary army. It is a real army that kills even bugs under the feet of the horses, but they are somehow sent to kill, right? So they take it literally. And when you read that ritual, you know who is the enemy from that ritual. He's relating to these communist revolutionaries who are killing monks.
Yeah, I have problems to follow that. I mean, it's very clear.
I know.
Like the like Uke kings, Chanchuk and so on, they send the translator Rinchen Sampo to Kashmir to find out how Tantra is to be understood. Like whether ritual killing and ritual sex are part of Tantra or not. And he came back and said, no, it's not. And then there was an edict, no, there should be no ritual killing and there should be no ritual sex. So like it was very clear, and that was the beginning of the second diffusion of the Dharma in Tibet. And that was kind of followed by everybody in Tibet afterwards.
Yeah. Maybe nowadays some contemporary Lama would try to kind of sublimate this ritual, but what was in that ritual was tough.
Well, I hear.
If I may just say, this is not so unusual, because also in early Buddhism we have a Drapani that emanates from the Buddha to protect because someone was trying to harm the Buddha, right? So already in early Buddhism, you have this idea that the Dharma needs to be protected.
Yeah, sure.
And if someone is going to destroy it, then
They will go to Avicii hell, so save them from
so
Avicii
in
hell.
some ways, it's an act of compassion. It's like the Bodhisattva Buddha and the captain, right? The famous story that he killed the captain, Buddha Sakyamuni, when he was a Bodhisattva, not only to save the people that they were going to be killed, but also to save the captain from falling into horrible hell realms. So it's not so far-fetched, or I would say non-Buddhist, this notion of the Dharma having to be protected.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we have any final questions for Professor Wallace? No? Okay, well, in
It's
that...
late.
Oh, yes, Nico.
A question that links to thinking about the subtle body and what you're often visualizing, and how whether the subtle body, in your understanding, is a purely visualized body, or whether there is a visceral or felt element to it. So do you, when you're talking about these visualizations of the subtle body, is it a purely abstract visualization? Because Michael Sheehy came here sort of a couple of years ago, and he thought of the subtle body as actually still corresponding to something that's felt. And I wanted to sort of, because you're talking about imagination and what is imagined, could you reflect on that?
It's some like imagining a body as a crystal egg. It's not something that's right, but of course, according to Tantra, there is a subtle body. But the focus is here really on lack of gross materiality. That's why one of these rituals says that you achieve it, when you're achieving it, you are also leaving behind any material atomic structures of your body, right? Focus is always, if you remember, just on a central channel. This is through which the mind of clear light will travel to Śambhala. But of course, there are many teachings on the subtle body, even within the Kala Chakra Tantra, very elaborate, how it's developed, how it falls apart, right, in the regular process of death, but also how it gets completely dissolves through 6 phases of yoga.
Oh, sorry. Please continue,
No.
Professor Wallace.
No.
I actually just had one question about your research process and how you've become interested in these texts, whether this started out from your work on the Kala Chakra Tantra and it primarily started out as a textual project, and how did you encounter these particular rituals, and how does your field work every summer to Mongolia inform the type of work that you're doing textually?
Mm-hmm. First question, yes, interest in this text emerged, or practices emerged from working with Kala Chakra Tantra previously. It wasn't easy to find them, It takes years to find one, but then I asked some other Lama about it, and then he said, oh, I think I have it home somewhere, and then I come with my iPhone and I take pictures of it, or I find it somewhere in the flea market. It's not easy to access always this kind of text with. I found many in the flea markets, actually, because families who had a Lama, before, who died, they didn't know what to do with this text, so they bring to make money. Yes, I found that understanding, maybe not so much this, although I could, maybe my knowledge of Tibetan, of Mongols, by now I'm kind of comfortable to argue that this was a, really ritual expelling and killing, because Dharma is in danger. And they believed it's a Śambhala time, so we are there. But it's a unique culture. It's not like Tibetan culture, as people oftentimes think. And they told me when even when I was a graduate student, and I said, I also want to look at Mongolian Buddhism, because at the time nobody did. They said, why? It's the same as Tibetan Buddhism. And I knew that it's not possible. If I look where Buddhism went and how it transformed itself in the different cultures, just because maybe Madhyamaka philosophy and love of Tsongkhapa is the same, that it cannot be same form of Buddhism. And so I do find useful when I read text. Sometimes, even if you don't know the name of, you see the name of author and it's a Tibetan monastic name, and you don't know whether it's a Mongol or Tibetan, then you find something that only Mongol would say, or you find something that's so culturally embedded, you say, oh, it's a Mongolian. Right? Not if you discuss emptiness. But even there, sometimes the example that they bring example from Mongolian culture. So yeah, it is very useful, because also people do different kind of ritual practices. We talk over the lunch some of those, and if you just read the text, wouldn't be enough. But when you actually see them doing and why they are doing it, that this has something to do with pastoral culture in the climate. The geography sometimes influences practices, climate, everything. And you understand better text when you know the culture.
Well, you deserve your time, your summer in Mongolia. As a busy professor in California, come on.
Yeah, but I love India. I love, India is I could say India is my mother, Mongolia is my father.
Yeah, but India is so
Tibetan
hot.
is my uncle.
India is so hot in the summer, like it's hot and sticky, so it's much better in Mongolia.
Mongolians say India is Tara, Tibet is Avalokiteshvara, and Mongolia is Vajrapani.
Well, let's give Professor Wallace a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Professor Wallace, and thank you, Professor Hardy, for facilitating the session. And of course, thank you all for actively participating in the Q&A session and for joining the whole lecture series. And of course, we very much hope that there can be chance for us to learn from Professor Wallace in the near future. And we are once again very grateful to the Mama Charitable Foundation for its very generous support to our center to make this lecture series possible. And thank you once again to you all for joining, and we hope to see you all again in our future events. Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Thank you all.